The Crypt interviews in association with Mayo Leisure Point Castle Bar.
You're listening to The Crypt, and joining me on the show now is award-winning horror author Anthony Crowley. So you're very welcome to the show, Anthony.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, Anthony, from the age of 6, you began to take an interest in literature and poetry. So what inspired you to write in the horror genre over others?
Initially, it began when I was a child. I was about 6 years old. And my grandfather, he was a poet too. And he published a couple of times. And so I thought to myself, knowing that was around me on a regular basis, and he learnt me various words, and he used to sit me down on the chair and hand me a book, and I just used to read it, and I got really enthralled into the descriptive words.
Yeah.
And it initially started from there, and also it was the classic Hammer horror movies and the old-fashioned black and white Universal films too.
And then, of course, you always had the Friday Fright Night on Channel 4, where they show all the old Hammer horror movies. They used to be great.
Oh, those was fantastic.
Yeah.
And that was when I got influenced and inspired by the works of Dennis Wheatley, from The Devil Rides Out and To the Devil a Daughter. And then I was just hooked. But also, where I lived when I was a child, it was it was like a dismal area. There's always something happening. And it was quite horrific at times. There's always accidents and there's tragedies. And so the reality of horror, I think that stuck with me. Like seeing certain things happen, like throughout life.
Yeah.
And I think the reality of horror, the psychology of it, can be more frightening too.
Exactly. Well then, when did you first become a published writer?
The first time it began when I was at college, when I was 16. It was for a newsletter. It was only a small piece, it was a small poetry verse. And another time, it was for a short story I did. It was, I did a short story. It was in a junior school, which the Americans say middle school. And it was called Mother's Day Massacre. It was 2 A4 pages of this short story. It was quite brutal, actually, and I was a child, and I thought, how the hell did I manage to come out with this kind of idea? And then when I began to publish through Amazon to get the initial exposure, it was a story I did called The Light of Keep's Passage. It was just a quick idea I had, but at first, obviously it happens with experience, and I initially rushed into it. But then I republished it afterwards. But that was interesting. It was exciting. I enjoyed it, and I think obviously you learn your craft as you go through the different stages, and I think that happens for years. And whether you're in the business 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you're always constantly learning a new idea, a new piece of knowledge, and it's always entertaining.
And where do you draw your inspiration from for your stories and poems?
It happens all around me, everyday life, whether it's past, present, and also the future.
Who'd be some of your favourite authors then in the genre?
It ranges from H.P. Lovecraft, Clive Barker, Stephen King, and as I said not long ago, Dennis Wheatley, Jack Ketchum. Jack Ketchum I interviewed Christmas time gone. That was interesting. I really enjoyed that, and Jack Ketchum really enjoyed the interview too. That was for Fear magazine.
And then I believe you've been compared to Edgar Allan Poe.
I have more on a few occasions, and I thought that's quite overwhelming actually.
Yeah.
When I heard that, and I thought, wow, people really think I write like him. But I like to be original though. I think my inspiration shows in some of my poetry verses, but I think it's always good to be original and be yourself, and always look forward.
Exactly, and not just to copy what's come before.
I know there's so much competition out there, and it's like there is a lot of people that tries to compete with each other. But it's really refreshing to always develop a new idea or a new theme.
Well, I've read your short story, The Conjuring Road, from your book of short stories, The Black Diaries, Volume 1, and I really liked your style of writing. It's extremely visual, capturing the imagination of the reader. Is that hard to achieve when you're sitting down writing a story?
When I first wrote The Conjuring Road, it was initially going to be titled The Oakwood Nightmare. And I thought to myself, that doesn't really sound much like a horror title. It sounds like somebody massacring the trees in the forest. And so I thought, I want something that would be gripping and also something short and simple, which will reflect the main theme, one of the main themes of the story. And I like to try and be visual as much as I can, whether it's with a short story or a poem.
Well, from your stories then to your poems, I read The Ripper, which is also in the Black Diaries. That's also very graphic, and in this poem you basically had to step into the mind of a killer. So can you talk about the process of writing that poem?
That was fantastic. I can still remember that like it was 5 minutes ago when I wrote it. And I was just visualising a scene. I was picturing myself walking down the road during the Victorian times in London. And I was trying to think of the worst situation that could possibly happen. And the first thing that came to mind was like, obviously like Jack the Ripper, he tortures his female victims. And so I just wanted to focus on that main scene and try and get into it as much as possible. And also, that's what I like to do when I write a poem. I like to be as raw as I can. However mild the poem might be, or however strong the poetry verse might be. It was also initially inspired by the song by the rock band Judas Priest, because they had the song called The Ripper. And I was listening to that song, and I thought to myself, I would like to write a piece about the Ripper. And that's what initially inspired me, actually.
Well, it goes to show, as a writer, all the different things around you that can inspire a poem. Like they're just sitting listening to a song and you came up with a great poem out of that.
That's happened on more than a couple of occasions, actually, in a similar process. It happened with another verse that I did, which is featured in the Tombstones collection, which is another poetry collection. There's a verse in there called My Friend Darkness. And I was listening to a song by the singer of Iron Maiden. He had a solo career at one point, and I liked how the song moved so much, and I just had a slight inspiration to write a poem of a similar theme, but also an original idea.
As well as that, you've had fantastic reviews for your novel, The Mirrored Room. So could you tell listeners a bit about the storyline of that book?
I was watching television, I think it was on a Saturday afternoon. There was a show called Crossing Over with John Edward, who was a television psychic. And that was where the main character came from. And I noticed with the show how everything just seemed positive, all the feedback from the communications with the afterlife, like for the audience. Yeah. So I thought to myself, how about a story about a psychic where everything just went wrong for him? And so that's basically what I did. But also at the same time, I was studying various divination literature and texts, and so the main inspirations for The Mirrored Room, it was from the various studies that I was involved with at the time, and also the inspiration was from the television show.
You must have to put a lot of research into your novels.
That was the first novella that I wrote. It was The Mirrored Room. But I've also been writing a second novel, but I'll speak about that later.
You're a featured contributor to Dead Good Publishing's digital magazine Haunted After Dark with Crowley's Crypt. So what is featured in Crowley's Crypt?
Crowley's Crypt is basically a perspective of my work and also my personality. So it's partly my personality and partly my creative process. That was wonderful. The publisher used to tell me, would you be able to send me something over by this day? And I would send it over immediately. And because sometimes the verses never take me long at all to write, because it's a combination of the poetry and also the literature, story literature, the fiction. And it's quite interesting, and it was very entertaining to do. And a few of the verses which are featured in The Haunted After Dark also appear in the scriptures, which is I released two short poetry collections the previous year called Scriptures 1 and Scriptures 2. And they both feature verses which were taken from the Crowley's Crypt, which was in Haunted After Dark.
And I love the guys at Deco Publishing. They're so nice. They're actually sponsors of. I have a monthly section on the show called Haunted History. So their magazine Haunted.
All right, okay.
They're actually the sponsors of that. They're very nice guys. But then, as well as Haunted After Dark, I believe you've wrote for many other publications too.
It's amazing how time flies. The first publication that I was involved with was Sanitarium magazine. And that was in October 2013, and it was Halloween. And it was just incredible because like being involved in horror mainly, and being Halloween, and everything just took off from that day, and it was just fantastic. And The Fallen Angel, one of my other poetry verses, was featured in Sanitarium issue 14. Then I was in 15, in issue 16. And so on, and also there was Massacre magazine issue 1 and 2. There's Subverse magazine issue 3. I'm trying to think of some other ones. There's several. Hello Horror magazine volume 2 issue 8 with Shadow of the Wolf. And recently, recent times, I've been involved with the Horror Zone. Yeah. I had a few poetry verses featured in. It was January, I believe it was last year, I think, or it was the year before. I don't know, time goes by that quickly. I can't exactly remember the year. And I've just recently had some new dark verses in the latest instalment of the Horror Zone. One of my favourite ones, which is featured in there, is called Necromancing the Beast. Basically, it's centred around a witch. And she wants to evoke, basically, her husband. Her husband was the devil. So it's quite an interesting piece, actually.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. Well, you've had so much work published. What advice would you give to people who you know, they're always writing at home and they want to see their work somewhere? What advice would you give them?
Keep pushing your work forward. If you get rejections, that should make you stronger. Just look at it like a relay track. You have to jump over those hurdles and just keep going.
Exactly, don't let anything hold you back.
Exactly, just be yourself.
Well, you're writing so long now. How do you feel you've evolved creatively as an author over the years?
I'm not too sure actually. I'll just keep going, and but I do have people tell me like, wow, you've released this and you've wrote that, you've been in this magazine and you're on that radio or this interview, etc. And it's like it's some dream that's happened, and I'm like, wow, did that really happen? It's like surreal at times. And
as well as that, now with the power of social media, it helps you get your work out there even more now, which is great.
Social media has helped quite well, actually, as you just mentioned, and also I design all my own advertising banners, which I advertise all my own projects on those banners. Either for Twitter and for Facebook, Instagram, all over the world, and through VK Network now as well. I think that's based in Russia.
Well, then, as well as writing, you also have a passion for music. So, have you done much work in that area?
When I was at school, I was in a band. What I formed the band myself. It was called Killing Breed. That was horror too. Yeah. And I was mainly a lyricist. I used to write so many lyrics. I began writing lyrics from the age of 9, and I just kept writing lyrics. It was like the perfect escape for me. It was like every child wanted to go outside and play with their mates on my street, and I was the child that used to run upstairs and lock myself in my bedroom, get the paper and pen, and just keep writing. And it was just wonderful. And I still write lyrics now, and I've joined a few songwriting forums. I have written for a couple of independent singers and music artists. I'm just trying to think what month it was. I think it was April last year. It was April or August. I sent a few songs off to a quite a well-known 80s dance pop band called Dead or Alive, and like for possibility if they could use my lyrics. It was a close call, but you just have to keep trying. But it's really good though, and also I got involved with learning to play the piano. And I did quite well at first. I was learning classical piano. I used to do a couple of lessons a week at this upright grand piano. It's fantastic. And I used to study at home as well. So I had a digital keyboard at home, but my digital keyboard broke. Then I had to put my lessons on hold because I was relocating, and from time to time, so that delayed things. But I'm hopefully going to finish off the piano tuition again eventually soon. I can write a little music too. I can compose a little.
Well, you see so many independent horror movies coming out now that are always looking for original soundtracks. That might be an area to look into as well.
Most definitely. I also want to write soundtracks to my stories too. I just love writing. I love all the different angles. But I think one of the most frustrating things with being an author or poet, I think many authors and poets can say this too, is so sometimes it's visual in what you do with your imagination in the story or the poem, but it can be frustrating because sometimes you just want it to be visual even further. And I think now I'm coming up to the point where I want to be involved in script writing, because I would like to see some of my stories adapted into movies.
Like Clive Barker.
Exactly.
That'd be deadly. Well, you can really tell the passion you have for your craft.
Thank you.
Well, can you tell me about your forthcoming collection of poetry?
The idea came about for that collection was, as soon as Christmas passed, I noticed all these celebrities kept dying.
Oh, it was terrible.
It was, wasn't it? It was like a crazy month. And that was the inspiration behind it, actually. I just wanted to do a collection which would focus on the beginnings of life through death and beyond the speculations of the afterlife. And so I thought, what shall I call a collection like that? And I thought, the Book of the Light. And I thought, I'll call it the Book of the Light, but also I'll rather use the Latin name for it because it would sound more original.
Yeah.
And also, when you're born into the world, the first thing you see is light. And when you leave the earth, many people say that's what happens. You enter the light, and so that's why it's called the Book of the Light. It's like a journey it's like a lifetime journey. The book will be laid out from the different stages. It will focus on the person itself in general, and it will be them telling the story from when they're born. The first verse within that collection is titled Embryo. It's basically the embryo is telling the story of what's going to happen next, the next stage of life, through the cycle, the life cycle. That's quite a fascinating piece to do, and I was imagining myself. I was back inside, growing into a child. Back inside the stomach. I always have to be the character. I think that's the only way it will work. That's the only way I will feel satisfied when I know that I've done the project perfectly right in my eyes, and in my readers' eyes too.
There's a book coming out, poetry book for David Bowie, and you're getting to contribute to that, I believe.
Yes, there's two actually. I'm contributing poetry, two poetry verses. One of them is called Cosmetically Cosmic, and the other is called Space Age Chameleon. That's for a collection called 47 to 16. There's another collection, another tribute collection coming out called The Sun Machine, and that shall feature one of my latest fiction stories, which is called The Roads of Mars. That has received some fantastic positive feedback from the editor actually, and that has been very overwhelming because the editor of that collection is also a film producer and he's a film writer, Salem Kapsaski.
And how did it come about you getting involved with those collections?
A few of those people, those friends, on my Facebook list, they're already friends of mine. It's like you have a circle of friends and that grows into another circle and so on. It just expands. And I think it happens also through like the advertising I do, the promotions. And that goes from one person to another person and they approach me and ask me if I want to be involved. And sometimes, occasionally, I ask the person that's organising the project, whatever project it may be, if they need some assistance or some help, or like for another contributor. But a lot of occasions, the people that organise the projects, they come to me. When I first began publishing, I used to always approach many different publishers. I've been rejected several times. Occasionally I still do. But when I first began, I used to get many rejections at first. And I used to hate it at first. The rejections used to knock my confidence. But then I just used to think to myself, I just have to keep going. And I'm surprised that I'm in my third year now, or fourth year. Fourth year, I think. The fourth year of publishing now.
Well, it goes to show if you just keep fighting on, you'll get there.
Most definitely.
Well, have you any other projects that you wish to share with listeners?
I have a joint collaboration coming out this year. It's something different, actually. It's called Sickest Things. It's like transgressive fiction, and it's very deep. It's dark as well. It does have its horror elements, but the title says it all. Basically, it's sickest. It's sickest things, and it's gross literature. And I think it was one of the most difficult works I've ever done, actually, because when I was writing the stories towards that collection, I wanted to. I felt so nauseated that I wanted to rush to the bathroom and have so many breaks in between. Yeah, that was very difficult. Another difficult project was also the David Bowie project because like of his recent passing for cancer.
Yeah,
and there's another project which I'm going to release in January 2017. It's a long way off yet. I mention it now because a week ago a friend of mine passed away from cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And I couldn't believe it. It was a complete shock because a couple of days before it happened, I spoke to him and it sounded like his usual self. He was cheerful. He was being comical and humorous, and
it can just go so quick in the end, can't it?
It's just very unreal what could happen. And his name is Richard Gladman. He was also a writer. He was very creative. He was an amazing, wonderful person, and he was one of my best friends I've ever had. And he was also the editor and writer of Space Monsters magazine, which is quite popular too. And this collection will be dedicated as a tribute to him, which will be called Monsters from Outer Space.
Oh, well, that's a lovely thing to do.
But that was extremely difficult to begin that project. But also, it was an honour because I wanted to do something. I felt so useless in a way because I knew that I couldn't save him, and I know many other people would think that too. But I just wanted to do something and put something back.
And that helps you grieve, I think. When you can do something like that, you feel you're doing something for them.
It does, definitely.
Yeah. If anybody wants to purchase any of your novels or poetry books or anything, where can they look for them?
They're available all over the world. Barnes & Noble stores, Books A Million, Amazon stores, Amazon UK, Amazon.com, even eBay. Available everywhere, and I also have a couple of audiobooks out too. Tombstones is available at Audible and also iTunes. That's narrated by Alan Wayman. He does a fantastic narration on that. And also The Mirrored Room, which is also on Audible audiobook, and it's on the iTunes too and Amazon, and that's narrated by the American radio host, and he does such an amazing job with that. Fantastic. His name's Corey Michaels.
And if people want to follow you on social media, have you Facebook, Twitter, all them?
Yes, my Twitter handle is Crowley_Anthony, and also I'm on Facebook at anthonycrowley.author, and I'm on Instagram at Anthony Crowley.
Fantastic. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's been a real pleasure, and once again, I'm so sorry to hear about your friend, and I'm sure he'd be so proud to have you dedicate your next work.
Thank you so much. Can I just mention something quickly, please? I forgot to mention not long ago.
Fire away.
I also have another collection coming out soon. It's a short story collection. It's titled Doomsday After Midnight. It's my first full story collection. It's a collection of 14 tales, and there's so much positive feedback. And the cover artwork was designed by Lauren Carroll. She's the personal assistant for the rock band Whitesnake, and she's also a tour photographer. And there's also going to be more surprises involved with that collection too.
Excellent. Oh, well, I tell you, I'm delighted to hear you're doing so well, and anything...
Thank you so much.
Anything the Crypt can do to help you out, if you want new works shared or anything on the page, just send them on to me and I'll do that for you.
Well, thank you very much. That's very kind of you, Rita. Thank you. It's a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The Crypt interviews in association with Mayo Leisure Point Castle Bar.